Welcome, stranger. This is what? This is Corey. Anyway, I recently did a video on how to buy a lens, part 1 and part 2. And after I got it up on YouTube and was looking at it, I decided that the oil on diaphragm section of the video needed its own video. So I decided to copy it. It should be short, and give it a new intro, which I'm doing now, and show it to people because people have, all film photographers have lenses, and quite often oil can get on the diaphragm and cause problems with their photographs. And also, if they intend on buying a lens, they really need to know what to look for. So that's what this video is all about. So anyway, let's get started. Here's the lens. It's partially disassembled. And there's the aperture blades that people are so concerned about. Normally, when the lens is off a camera, they'll be down, but when you mount it on the camera, they will lock up like so. And the reason they do that is so the get my probe here. The viewfinder you want it to be bright. On the early lenses in the 60s, they didn't have this feature, and so when you look through the viewfinder, like on a Pentax Spotmatic, it would be very dim inside, and you would have to open the lens to be able to compose your picture, and then you'd have to close it down to the aperture that you wanted to take your exposure at. Well, later they fixed that to where when you have it off the camera, and I don't know that all cameras are this way, but it's basically the same principle. You pick up the lens, and it's not on the camera. It'll be closed. When you lock it on the camera, it'll be open. And when you take your picture, whatever exposure you've chosen, whatever aperture, the lens will close down to that aperture. When the picture's taken, once the picture's taken, it'll open back up. Now these blades here are like on a rose petal, and they have pivot points. Here's one right here. Here's one here. Here's one here. Here's one here. Here's one here. Each one of those pivot points is a blade. And the reason I'm pointing that out is because when people think about oil on a aperture blades, they think about the oil being on the blades. But oil can also be at the pivot points, and you'll never see the oil. This is important, as I will show you shortly. That you think, well, I'm looking at the blades and I see no oil, but yet it opens and closes slow. What's going on? Well, then you've got oil at the pivot points, or you might have oil in the mechanism. There's a plate back here that turns left and right, not very far. It only has to go far enough to open and close these blades here. But sometimes oil can get on that plate and also do the same thing. So let's go ahead and grab some lenses here. I tried to find some lenses that would represent what you might see if you go to buy a lens. And we'll have to hope the light can get through here. Here's one that's working properly. As you can see, there's no hesitation. It's almost instantaneous. And it makes that kind of clicking sound also. So that those blades on that are okay. And the pivot points are also okay. Normally, you don't oil blades. They normally will run dry. So when you go in to clean them, you just clean all the oil off and put them back in dry. Now this right here, if you go to a camera show and you are doing this, you say, well, I don't see any oil on the blades, but yet it's dragging. You don't want to buy this lens. It has oil at the pivot points, or it has oil on the plate that the pivot points ride in. And even though you don't see oil on the blades, the oil will have to be cleaned out. And you would say, well, it's closing down though, so won't it work? No, it won't. The camera, when it releases and is starting to take its picture, this is moving so slow that it'll take the picture, say about here, before it closes down to whatever you've set it for. In other words, if you've set it for f16 or 22, it's moving so slow it won't get into position in time. You see how it's moving slow like that. The camera will go ahead and take the picture before it completely gets down to the preset aperture that you have chosen. So you always want it to be able to snap down. It has to snap into position before the picture is taken. And also, like I said, even though you can't see the oil, there's oil on the pivot points or oil on the plates. And I don't know if you can hear it, but there's some thunder in the background. Looks like it might have some rain. Okay, here's another one, and I wanted to show you. And on this one, you can see the oil. Oil on blades always is shiny. Makes them look wet. And that's why I chose this lens here, is so you could see what oil looks like on the blades. If you don't know, some of you may already know. When you're buying a lens, let's see if we can look down through the front. I don't know, the light is shining through here. I'm going to say, no, we're not going to be able to see it. We'll go to this side. We can see it over here, though. See the oil on the blades there. And you might think, well, what causes that? How does oil get on the blades? Normally, it happens when the lens gets hot. Well, the grease in the camera, which we discussed earlier, this has a helical, and there's grease in it. That grease, when it heats up, I don't know what you'd call it, but I would call it solvents. The solvents in the grease, whatever is in there, vaporizes, and when the lens cools off, the grease condenses onto the blades. And that's how it happens. It's caused by heat. Some of you out there that know more about this sort of thing than I do will have to explain it. I don't know what goes into grease, but the grease melts. Part of it vaporizes, goes into the air. Later, the lens closes down. I say closes down, cools off. Maybe it's cooling off. It's real cold at night. And that vapor has to go somewhere, and it goes right to the blades. And that's how oil gets on them. And then sometimes it does it by kind of a capillary action. The grease gets hot, and it flows down to the pins, and then from the pins down to the blades. That's another way it gets in there. Anyway, so you've seen three. You've seen the oil on the blades. You've seen one that's slow, even though there's no oil on the blades, because the oil is on the pivot points, or it's on the plate that the pivot points are riding in. So even though you don't see oil on the blades, this lens will need repair work. And then you've seen one that's in good shape here. Immediately snaps down. It has to snap into position again before the picture is taken. And if the blades are slow, the picture will be taken before they close down, and essentially you get overexposure. I don't know what these are because I'm not looking, but 5.6, 3.5, 5.6, maybe 8, 16, 22, whatever you set it for. When you're looking through it through your viewfinder, it'll be bright. When the camera gets ready to take the picture, it needs to close down, take the picture, and then open back up so you can see through the I'll get it there eventually. Get it through the viewfinder. I've been at this all day and I am tired. Anyway, that's the Aperture. There's the Aperture. This one probably has oil at the pivot points because it's not snapping all the way down. It should, but it's not. And this is what I'd call a junker. It's normal, I'd throw it away. I found it and thought that it might be useful for this video. So I brought it in the shop, cleaned it up, and look at it. And I should get going here because this video's been long enough, but if I wanted to clean those blades, I would take this screw out here, here, and here, and this plate would lift up and the blades would be exposed. They would probably fall out. I would have to be very careful. Then I'd have to remove them, clean each one, put them back in the proper position, and then put these 3 screws back in. A customer, I say a customer, one of the viewers out there would have no problem doing that. That's the simple part. The hard part is getting down this far into the lens. It has to be done properly, and it has to be reassembled properly. So that's the hard part. The actual cleaning of the blades is not that much trouble. Okay, that's it. You just saw a small copied section from How to Buy a Lens, part 2, that unfortunately was kind of pushed toward the end of part 2, and I could tell by the people that viewed it that a lot of people didn't see it, but the subject from my viewpoint as a camera repairman is very, very important, and I wanted to make sure that everybody did see it, so I made its own video. I need to start writing scripts later.